Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast. Today, we have a extremely special guest, somebody I've personally worked with, Emily Davis. She is a certified coach inside Rebel Nutrition. If you don't know Rebel Nutrition, I've been following Amy for years. She's known as the Lazy Millionaire on Instagram. Emily is behind a lot of the support and strategy for social media and branding. She is also a freelance consultant for branding, social media, and online course creation. I highly recommend her. So if you ever want to work with her, please go down to the show notes. She's been working in social media for a decade. You can definitely tell, and in online course industry and creation for about 7 years. So, Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to dive into this today because you actually said a word to me. Well, you said omnipresence in one of our calls. And I was like, that's the word I've been thinking about, this like omni, because we
Yeah.
talk a lot about how PR can be extremely supportive for a brand. That is always the next step. That's the next level. If you're really looking to expand, it also adds a lot of credibility and trust. I've been in PR for years. I don't know if you know this, but I've worked in a corporate level with like Grammy
Mhm.
Award winning artists, big brands. And now in the personal branding space, it's such an important thing. But what we also talk about too is it's not like a one size fits all for growing a brand. Like social media is an extremely important piece.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here. I guess we'll dive
Yeah.
in with like, can you tell us about your story, how you got into social media and coaching? I love to just hear like the background and then we'll dive into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, totally. I honestly just I fell into it kind of, and I think there's probably a lot of people who have had similar experiences when you grow up with social media and the internet and you have this like fluency that you've developed with just like the way the internet works and the way that people talk. And like I actually like I have a lot of, empathy and compassion for people like of an older generation that are trying to figure out how to make these tools work for them because they didn't grow up like completely immersed in it. So because of like, being on Tumblr and then being on Twitter
Yeah.
right when it came out and all this stuff. Like, I just happened to be, I was working as an executive assistant, and the person that I was working for wanted to start a skincare brand, and she needed someone to run her socials. And I was the youngest person, like, on the team. So she was like, "Can you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could probably figure this out." And that was like, that was 11 or 10 years ago, maybe. Um, and then it really just kind of like snowballed from there of like running other people's social media accounts who just like, and that was back in the day where you could like batch like 30 grid posts and like everything was super aesthetically forward. No one was really like actively selling anything. It was just about having a presence on there because you wanted to. And then a few years later, I got an internship at a company. And basically, I was running operations for that company, and the founder decided, and he had heard about online courses, and he was like, this seems like a really lucrative opportunity, and I just want to like kind of break into it. So can you like, he basically tasked me with learning about digital products, and he was like, can you just learn everything there is to know and then teach the team and then we'll create one. So I was like, okay,
Wow.
let's do that. So we ended up making a course, and it made like $1 million in like the first year or something like that. It just like it really blew up. It was crazy. um, and then because I had then learned that skill, the online course industry started to really kind of bubble 2016, 2017, 2018. And then obviously over COVID, everything just kind of exploded. So because I had the skill, I just kept getting pulled in a bunch of different directions. People being like, I know a girl who does online courses and she can blah, blah, blah. So then I just kind of went off on my own and started to run like build online courses for people and consult in that way. And then I got connected with Amy through a mutual friend, and we just like had an exact alignment on the process for like what social can do and what branding can do and why products are created the way that they are and what makes an effective one and like how to put your student experience at the forefront and all this stuff. So we really aligned. So that was like two years ago or something. And ever since then, I've just been coaching like inside for all of her students. We've run different membership programs. And yeah, it's just like I said, everything just kind of like has fallen kind of accidentally into one phase. to the other. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. Wow, I love how you were tasked to learn about like online courses and social media, and it kind of
Yeah.
became you like really were at the forefront of everything, which is so when you when you mentioned the grid post, I was like, oh yeah, RIP. I remember those days.
Simpler times, simpler where you could just like go into Canva and make a square that said like something vaguely inspirational on it, and you'd be like, okay, done. Like as long as I'm
Yep.
posting every day, like that's fine.
Yep.
So that's what we were doing for a while, but obviously, and that's something that Amy does well too. It's like, understanding to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what the new trends are so that you can participate, so that you are favored algorithmically and you can grow. And if you don't pay attention to those types of things, then you will kind of stay stagnant. So it's good to keep an open mind and just kind of have an attitude of like, okay, this was working at one point and now it's not really anymore. So what's the next thing? And
Yeah.
not be sort of scared about that and just be like, okay, let's just like embrace and tweak our strategy, keep everything else the same in terms of what we want to communicate, but we just change sort of like the vessel that thing is in.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think back in January, I think it's a lot of it is an awareness piece. Like you just kind of get into a
Mm,
rhythm where you're doing things, and then one day you realize that your numbers aren't working or like something
yeah.
isn't working. And so being at the forefront, like you had mentioned, like being hyper aware of what is shifting and changing is something that I really admire about you. You're very good at that. So
Thank you.
Bridget and I in January, we went on this whole quest of like, okay, we know how to build a brand and grow through PR. Like we know how
Yeah.
to do that. But when it comes to social media, we're like, I don't understand like what's not working. We were doing the Canva posts and everything, and then we decided we were shifting into a brand growth strategy on everything. So that's why we talked about like Pinterest, YouTube, and then we ventured into Instagram. And it was just kind of like perfectly aligned where we learned about selling social and
Hmm.
decided to jump in with 2 feet. So, can you tell us a little bit about selling social and like what
Yeah.
that is and how you support people? And then I would love to go into like the actual, little learning points of what
Yeah.
works for social media.
Yeah, so we had a membership that we ran for about a solid year that was a component, like a companion offer to Amy's signature course, which is Online Course Academy, which
Yeah.
teaches you in a self-paced environment how to make your own online course, how to choose your profitable course topic, how to get really clear on what that is, how to turn it into a passive sales funnel so you're making sales all the time. It goes through that whole process really in depth. We noticed, or she noticed, which is why we kind of got connected in the first place, that there was a huge demand for a little bit more hands-on help, and that's like really not like energetically in alignment for her. She wants to. She's more like, if you want to get into like human design woo woo kind of stuff, like
I
I'm a
love human design.
projector. Okay, I'm a projector, so I take all the information and then I'm sort of like, I have a very short span of like the amount of like energy that I can kind of like express on a daily basis, but I'm good at kind of like taking all the pieces that I'm observing and then kind of delegating in a way, or like then people implement after my observations or whatever is kind of what I know about being a projector so far.
Yeah.
And she's, I think, a generator, or a manifesting generator, I can't remember, but she's really good at like the doing, right? So it was kind of this perfect opportunity, where I like, first of all, like I'm also a Virgo, so like I love to give unsolicited advice. So I'll take any opportunity to give my opinion, right? And give solicited advice is like the perfect scenario for me. So she's like, I don't want to coach, but you could, because we had the exact same like roadmap of like how to, like I said before, how to create a good digital product. So we started that membership to give people some more hands-on help throughout the process. And then we just like kind of behind the scenes stuff. We're like, okay, I think we need to tweak the offer. Like it's good, it's providing a lot of value, but it's hard to grow it and all this kind of stuff. So then we were like, but what we do hear all the time, and this is just sort of like a good thing to note for anyone who's sort of in the space of like product development of any kind, like listening to your audience and what they're asking for and like what they are struggling with, is your like literal, like all these little golden nuggets that you can use in your marketing and in the creation of your offer suite or your products or whatever. So we just kept hearing people struggling with social media, struggling to grow. And not only that, like specifically struggling to grow in the niche of like digital products and online coaching and online consulting and course creation. And it really is a different method. It's not like, hey, grow because you want to be an influencer necessarily, or like just grow because you want to, like, it's really supposed to be, and our idea initially was like, we want to tailor it to people that want to grow these types of businesses and how do they need to show up online.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to create Selling Social, to help entrepreneurs with having a roadmap, not only for like what is the correct approach, but also taking, like, looking at what the main pain points were that we knew the audience was facing, which is just like endless scrolling, not knowing, like the analysis paralysis of like staring at your phone and being like, what the hell do I post today? And then getting down on yourself when you don't post because you don't have a strategy. So we were like, okay, how can we kind of address that main sticky point? We can give them a framework of what to post every day and make it really easy. Collect the trending audio so people don't have to go looking for them. Like, be on the cutting edge of like what the algorithmic changes are so that we can feed that back to our members and stuff like that. So really, we just wanted to create, yeah, like a sort of an easier way to approach marketing yourself and your courses and your offers. So that's why we created Selling Social.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so wildly like valuable because each week you're giving the audios, you're giving like prompts, and they're
Mm-hmm.
prompts that work. It's so interesting to me how you can deliver the same information, but
Mm-hmm.
it's about how you position it. And I think
Yeah.
you're really good at that. So, can you tell us, like, do you have a maybe like template or things that we can look at when we're trying to position our brand, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in like a social media setting where it can be valuable? I feel like this is like a loaded question, but positioning is so important. And every time we're on calls, I'm just like amazed at how you're like, well, you could say it this way, or you could position it this way. And I'm like, that's incredible.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that it makes sense and it resonates. I would say it kind of it's a loaded question just in the sense that, like, if you don't have a product or
Mhm.
a service or an offer that you have created thoughtfully to solve a specific problem, then there's not really a lot of ways to then show up on social media and market that thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you always are keeping your audience, your potential student, your customer in mind, then you should always be thinking about, okay, where are they at currently? What are they struggling with? What are they up against? What are the obstacles that they are currently facing on their way to get this thing that they want, right? And hopefully your solution is crafted to be the solution to the thing that they want, right? Like, your offer should be that problem solver, that fixer, that, like, I have a misbehaving dog and I love my dog so much, but I'm strapped for time and I don't have the I can't afford hiring a one-on-one trainer for my dog, and I can't afford to send them to like one of those expensive boot camps for 6 weeks where they like come back. I need a solution. Okay, I found someone online who is going to teach me how to like train my dog to be like a service animal behavior in the next 30 days by doing, 1 hour a day exercises or 5 minutes a day or something like that. If you Let's say you have that product in mind, right? In the way that I would recommend you position it is kind of the points that I just hit, which is like, are you solution oriented? Do you know the problem? Okay, I have a misbehaving dog that I want to be trained so that it's like not tearing up my house or whatever. And I'm strapped for cash, so I need to make it a certain price point that's different than, less than hiring someone one on one. And I am strapped for time. I don't have like the resources. I'm confused on how to do it for myself. So you're saying that you can break it up into 5 minute exercises a day or whatever it is. So you're being really, really intentional about your customer and like the things that they are currently struggling with, right? If you have a product like that, it ends up being really easy to then in turn go onto social and speak to those daily struggles and those solutions, right? Because you can actually say, because you know your customer so well, you can use marketing language like, Did you wake up this morning and your dog peed in your room? Did you come home and they ripped a hole in your brand new sofa? Are you not able to, like, you see people walking or like having their dogs at nice cafes, but you know your dog would never be able to handle like sitting at a cafe and you enjoying a lunch. You can't bring your dog to your friend's house. Like getting really specific about like instances that are happening for your audience is agitating the problem for them. It's making them feel seen. It's making them feel like they can trust you because you are really tapped in with what they're going through, right?
Yeah.
Versus just being like, you have a misbehaving dog. Okay, well, what does misbehaving look like? How do I know that my definition of misbehaving is the same as yours, right? But if you bring definitions with specificity, then I can feel like, oh, this person with this product, like I am in good hands with them because they are naming the issues that I'm currently experiencing. What I always say with social, like when you're trying to figure this out for yourself, it's like I want you to be so specific that your potential student is literally like, oh my god, like does she have a hidden camera in my house, like how did she know? Like that's so specific. That's
Yeah.
like, and that's what works on me too. Like think about like even skincare products like that are concern focused, right? Like you see something and you're like, oh, hyperpigmentation under this specific area of your face or acne in this specific area of your face. You're like, that is what I have, you know? Right? So that's kind of like a long-winded way of answering the question, but just to say like the way that you position your social needs to be in direct alignment with the positioning of the product that you've created. And hopefully, if you want to have a profitable product, you have something that is solution to a or like a tangible outcome to a specific problem for a niche group of people. That's really what makes it successful. And then you take all of those things that you learned when you created that product. And a lot of people like create these things because of what they've experienced in their own lives, right? They're like, I really, I married an Italian and I needed to learn Italian really quickly. I didn't have time to do a Rosetta Stone and Duolingo wasn't working. I needed a way to like learn Italian quickly to speak with his family in like a colloquial sense where I could like have slang and not be like formal. So I created a course for people to learn that too. Like you can draw on your own experiences, and then when you go to social, it like these things should just kind of unlock for you, and you could be like, oh, I remember that time that I was, you know, sitting in a room feeling really embarrassed, and then I was able to do this and that or whatever. It's like drawing on the specificity and not being afraid to niche in those moments, I think are really what make a strategy, a social strategy that is like effective and also like really resonates with the people that you're trying to reach, and it helps you stand out.
Yeah, I absolutely love the specificity. We also say that a lot too when we tell our clients to pitch to podcasts, for example, and give like
Mm,
speaking points because you want to see the value first in
mm.
the potential responses that they're giving. So I love how you positioned everything there with the specificity. Oh my God, I can say it in mind. Because there's so many ways we can interpret a lot of different sentences. So if you're not being specific, like what you mentioned about the misbehaving dog, like what does that actually look like? But you're saying like, he pees in the house or whatever that is, it's going to
Hmm.
trigger that exact like camera in the house kind of scenario, which is what you're mentioning.
Yeah, totally. And I think people are really struggling with this now, but they don't have to. But like, I
Yeah.
notice a lot of people like they feel in order to sell their products, or and maybe you feel this way too when like you're trying to help your clients get specific. They feel like they want to like deliver the world, so they use these really
Yes.
broad terms of like next level life, like dream life, or
Those
like,
drive
you
me
know, like
insane.
yeah, like unblock yourself and like unstuck yourself
What does
and
this mean?
like like what the hell does that mean? Stuck with what? Like I would 10 10 times out of 10, 100% of the time hire an expert or a coach. And we were just talking about this on Selling Social yesterday. You hire someone because of their niche experience. Like
Yep.
wouldn't you rather hire, like, you could hire an accountant, right? That's just like, I'm an accountant. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is what I do. We're quick, we're easy, we're whatever. Or like, would you rather hire an accountant that specializes in like the profession that you're in? Like, especially like, let's say you're self-employed, right? Like
Totally.
I hire an accountant that specifies or specializes in entertainers, and like how to get all of your write-offs as an artist because he knows all of the different ways that like artists and entertainers and actors or whatever like draw inspiration, which can be used as a tax write-off. And he knows the loopholes here. He knows whatever. Like a specialty is a specialty for a reason. And I think we were talking about this yesterday too, like, you know, feeling, kind of what we were saying about like this broad language, right? Like if you think about like beauty professionals, I think a lot of times if people are struggling to get bookings, they think, okay, well, let me just like add a bunch of random services that I could do also so that I can help my bottom line. So I'm going to learn how to do lashes. Even though I really want to do facials, I'm just going to learn how to do lashes. I'm going to learn how to do eyebrows. I'm going to get a laser hair removal machine because then I could add or whatever. And then they become kind of a jack of all trades, right? But I really would ask yourself truly, would you rather go to a jack of all trades beauty person, or would you rather be like, I'm going to Lisa for my eyebrows because she is the eyebrow queen, like she
Yep.
understands facial structure and shape, and she is not just doing a one size fits all approach to eyebrows. She's like going to tailor the perfect eyebrow shape for your face to enhance your features, like, and maybe that's the only thing she does, but she's so good at it that everyone goes to her and she probably has a wait list. So, all of that to say, broad language, it only makes you seem like you don't have a specialty. It only makes you seem like you don't help people achieve one specific transformation, which then leaves people feeling unclear. And if people are unclear, they don't buy. And they also don't convert into followers, even just like on the social aspect. Like you follow someone because you feel like you have an expectation of what you're going to get from them if you
Yeah.
continue on the journey. But if they're just like lofty about everything, then you're just like, I don't understand what you're helping me with. And like you saying that you can just kind of like do a general sweep of like my next level self or like help me elevate. I'm like, I truly don't know what that means.
Nobody knows what that means. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I can already hear all the questions in people's minds of those entrepreneurs or personal brands that are like, well, I have a bunch of certifications. I do so many things. Like I really tailor all of my tools in my toolkit to the specific person. So I can't niche down. What would you tell them on how to position themselves? I know my answer here, but I'm curious to hear what yours is because
Yeah.
I hear this a ton, especially when they're trying to pitch themselves to like, magazines or podcasts. They're like, why can't I call myself? And it's this like laundry list of different
Like
titles.
multi hyphenate. Can you give me an example of the types of hyphenates those would be in this situation? Like, is it like health, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, sure. So we work with a ton of like spiritual type of health practitioners or holistic health practitioners. So they'll
Okay.
have a ton of different certifications. Like maybe they'll have, certified nutritionist, certified health coach, like neuro linguistic programming, human design. Like I'm talking like packing in a giant list. And so
Yeah.
it's really hard for them sometimes to niche down, or they'll have a lot of questions because they'll be like, well, I do so many different things in my program. How can I like niche it down? So, what would you tell this type of individual? And it could be like lots of different things. This is just one of the
Yeah.
examples.
Yeah. So what I would say is like it's actually kind of like for the most part, this is sort of a two-parter, or
Yeah.
who knows, a 15-parter knowing me. But for the most part, like the method of how you get someone somewhere is like none of their business. Right? So like why do I hire a human design coach? Not because I'm just like, let me just learn about human design because I just like as a hobby necessarily. To what end? Like human design so that I can do what? So that I can completely restructure my business to work in alignment energetically with what makes me like feel happy so I don't feel drained or whatever. Like nutrition and for to what end? Because I have really bad inflammation, I have IBS, or I want to lose weight, or I have really bad skin issues. Like again, like I'm not so really curious like exactly how you're going to like sort of deploy your nutrition background. I just want to know you can get me a result, right? I want to know that you can fix a problem that I have. How you get me there, I don't really care, as long as, like, obviously, like, most of the time, like nothing crazy, but like that's not really any of my business. Like, you're the expert, so you just tell me what to do. Because by then, once I'm at that point, like, I should know that, like, if I'm listening to a podcast that you're on, or if I'm on your website, you have testimonials, you have all of these statistics to back up your thinking and whatever, so you can kind of, you can mention what your method is. But like, leading with all of the different ways that you help someone leaves out the thing that you're helping them with and what you're helping them achieve. So I would say to people that are like multi hyphenate in this way, I would really think about, like, yes, maybe you can do all of these things, but like, what do you really love to do? Like, what do you get excited about, like, specifically with a transformation that you create for someone, where you're like, oh, I just feel like my process is like, it's ironclad, it's tight, it's like, I know I've done this with enough people, and it just feels so good when I get someone from this, like, A to B. It doesn't always have to be A to Z, just this one little thing that makes a difference for someone. Is there something in there that lights you up? And then figure out, like, okay, I know I'm really good and I feel completely confident that I can get someone from here to here. Okay, let me structure an offer that makes sense, where they can have the success. I feel like I'm getting paid for the amount of time, whether that's like a self-paced thing or a coaching thing. And then be like, then I can let them know, once they're in my funnel, the ways in which I get them there. Like, we're doing an elimination diet, or we're going to do allergy testing, or we're going to whatever, so that you can back up how you get these results. And it's not like you don't have to keep it like secret behind a curtain. It's just like, you don't lead with that. So I think, you know, figuring out what you feel, number one, confident in creating a transformation around. Number two, does that feel in alignment for you? Like, do you feel like really excited about creating that for someone? And then the third thing is like, who is in your network, and like, what types of people are coming to you with questions? What type of people do you like to be around? And then what are those people struggling with? And then, I think those are kind of ways that you can begin to create a niche, even when you've collected all of these skills
Yeah,
over time,
I love that response. And PR and social media are so similar in that you need to figure out what your brand is and be so insanely clear, so then you can
Mm-hmm.
position or present yourself in the best way to get the thing that you want, which is like the followers, the engagement. And I love the specificity piece, because it really helps you get to know your brand too, and get to know your clients in the best way
Yeah.
possible. This is
Yeah,
so great.
totally. So
Yeah.
what do you tell people when they wanna, when they're like, Lydia, like, I just, like, but I do all these things. Like, what is the thing that you say to them, like, as the
Literally
publicist, or like,
exactly. I like exactly what you said. I'm like, okay, well, they don't care about all of your certifications unless you're like a psychologist or something,
yeah.
or like nutritionists. You'll notice that, like, or maybe you won't, but magazines, they care a lot about like dietitian nutritionists over nutritionists. Not to say that they're not important, just it has a different level of like of education. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that you're less valuable. It's just like, let's get on those value points or the specificity of it, and then lead with that first. Lead with your certain credentials help with positioning, but certain ones don't necessarily. It's more about the value and the transformation and the results. So I
Yeah.
always say to like position that first, lead with that. And then in terms of like, like title selection, what resonates most with you? So I love that you said that, like, okay, like, what do you love doing? So like, you might
Mm-hmm.
have a ton of certifications, but do you want to be known as a human design guide, or do you want to be known as a nutritionist? You can also do both, but we can't have like, 15 different certifications and be like, I'm this. Da, 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 da. Yeah.
Right. Or it's like, I help people, like, if it's like, say someone who is a nutritionist and like they love human design and they're like an expert in it, whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's an interesting combination of things, right? So I would say, like, okay, well, what is the optimal result that you feel like a lot of people come to you for? Again, what do you feel is the transformation that you feel confident in creating for people? So let's say it's like weight loss, right? Like, I help you lose weight and keep it off for good by looking at your nutrition, but developing a plan that fits your unique human design type so that it sticks. right? So
Yeah.
like again, you're letting someone know the problem that you know that they have, that you have a solution for it, and it's a unique approach, and you feel like I know that this works because I have a way that like I know human design so well that I know how each type like responds to like a protocol or a plan. So I'm able to set you up for success in the way that you need based on being a
Right.
reflector, a projector, whatever. And I have the certification, so it's backed up with like the actual like you can trust that you're in good hands with the things that I'm recommending to you, kind of a
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, and then you're adding authority to it. So like somebody who maybe
Mm-hmm.
has only gone to dietitians, maybe they're going to look at a human design expert because you're an expert in this space and you are convincing enough, or like not convincing, but like you're establishing your authority to also show
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I also deserve a seat at the table of this conversation.
Well, right. And this is where like the method can come in sometimes in industries that are saturated, which I
Mm,
always say, like, it's nothing to be scared of with saturation. It means that there's demand
yeah.
for it, right? Like that just means that there are so many people that want a solution for this thing. Um, but I feel like oh, what was I just about to say? It's left me. Oh, where the method comes in is like, in something like nutrition or like weight loss, there are all of these different things that people have tried, right? Like we know
Yeah.
that people try intermittent fasting, they try keto, they try like calorie deficit, they try this, that, whatever. Sometimes in those situations, when people have tried a million things and it's not this like new frontier, you can use your expertise as a way to market your course. Like, let's say you're a macros expert and you're like, I teach you like a no brainer way to learn macros that like is not going to take away from your lifestyle, that is not going to leave you feeling starved. You can still eat the things that you want, but my method is so no brainer and whatever. And it's going to take you 2 weeks to integrate it, but you're going to learn macros. And that is what is going to be the thing that is going to finally work for you. That's when you can use, sort of the how, because, it is generally speaking, it's like people don't care how you get them there. They just want to arrive at the destination. But
Yeah.
like, again, if you feel like this is why it goes back to being like really customer focused, is that like you should know the person that you're trying to attract, you should have some kind of idea of like the level of fluency that they currently possess in this industry. So like in other words, are you trying to attract beginners? Are you attracting novices, like intermediate, or are you attracting like advanced people? So, like, let's just use manifestation for an example. Like, this is such a popular topic now, right? This is like there's a million and one resources about manifestation, but everyone is at their different, like, at different levels of their journey. So, there
Totally.
are some people who could specialize in like going after people who are beginners in manifestation and getting them in of like reframing their mindset and letting go of negative beliefs and da 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 da, so that they can begin to understand that there is a better world out there for them. But then you have people who might be really advanced and they do full moon rituals and they've maybe tried a quantum leap this or whatever, but like they they know that something has not worked fully for them yet. So you as the manifestation expert are going after people with this advanced knowledge to say, you know what, I know you tried all of this other stuff, but have you tried, what quantum magnetic fields, blah blah blah, or whatever, butchering the terminology, I'm sure, but you know what I mean, because like you have that keen awareness of where your customer is at, so therefore you know how to speak to a solution for them.
Yeah. Gosh, I love this. So, what I'm hearing is that we have to get the foundational pieces in order. We need to know the value. We need to know how to position. So, we need to know our clientele, right? So, now we know where
Mm-hmm.
everything is and what to do. So, how do we take all that information and show up online, show up on
Yeah.
Instagram? Like, I know that reels, and especially from learning and selling social, are the thing that's going to really move the needle in terms of
Yeah.
bringing new individuals to your page. But what types of reels would you recommend? I feel like honestly, you could start anywhere. I feel like this is the big question. If you're not a social media expert, it's like, what do I do? Where do I start? Like, what should I start with? What are the hooks? Like, there's so many questions out there. So, what would you recommend for maybe beginners that are just starting to dip their toes into the world of reels and looking at Instagram as a growth strategy for a brand?
Yeah, so I would say let's just do like a quick overview of like
Yeah.
where Instagram is at this present moment because there have been lots of changes. So at the time of recording, October 18th, 2024, this is kind of the vibe. This is the vibe that's going on.
Timestamp.
So, generally speaking, there are two types of content on a broad sense that you should keep in mind. And just for your own understanding, there's sort of growth focused content, and then there's nurture focused content, right? Nurturing means that you are trying to create community and cultivate trust and authority with the people that have opted into your universe, right? The people that have followed you, they're watching your stories, they're commenting. You want to nurture those people. You want to give them, you want to create little free downloads for them. You want to speak to them. You want to ask, you want to like put question box up and say like, hey, what are you guys struggling with, whatever. You want to create like a little bit of a fan base, right? If you want to be an expert in this space, right? That's nurture content. Growth content is like, I'm trying to cast this net out there for a cold audience of people that do not currently follow me, and I want to get more eyes on my stuff. So that's what I'm going to focus energy on my growth content. You should have both of these in mind at all times. The way that you just now speaking specifically to the components of the app, your nurture content is going to be your stories, right? Because stories are never going to be seen by people that don't follow you. That's not a growth mechanism, but it's a really good way to connect. Like, I feel like people use stories more than anything. Like, in terms of just like in personal user experience, like I'm on stories and I'm connecting and I'm remembering way more of what people post on stories than they do on their reels and grids because I'm seeing it, right? Um, your comment section, things like that, your DMs, that's all of your nurture stuff. For your growth, that's going to be reels predominantly because the algorithm just favors them. But interestingly, in the last year, Instagram has made, a couple changes to the app where they've given every component its own algorithm. So
Oh, wow.
before there was a while, like now, like there really is an algorithm for stories. Like if you're not posting engaging content, they can tell, and then they're not going to show your story to your followers, right? So that's a whole thing. So you have to look at the data. Are people like, are you again creating something that's engaging for your customer? We're always going to be thinking of them when we approach this stuff. Um, Interestingly, in terms of the other part of the growth mechanism, other than reels, is now they've actually, I don't know if you've noticed this, but like you can actually see grid posts, like carousel posts, come up on your
Carousels.
feed as suggested, which
Yeah.
was not a thing like over a year ago. That was something that was absolutely locked in, not a growth mechanism. You were never going to have those posts seen by people who didn't follow you. But now the strategy there is like creating a lot of value in those carousel posts and like sort of solving one little granular problem and explaining something in like 5 to 10 slides or something. And that will come up if you use, a couple hashtags and you're like really using keywords that your audience is searching for in your caption and stuff. Those will come up as suggested content for your potential audience, which is great. So in terms of a suggestion of what I would focus on if you were just starting out, I would again say, what solution do you have? Like, what are you helping people with as a coach, as a consultant, with a physical product, with a digital product? What is the problem that you're solving? Who is that person? If you have not already gotten specific and done like a brain dump and like given your ideal customer a name and an age and a hobby and a job and whatever, I would definitely recommend doing that because the strategy that I believe to be most effective in this industry for Instagram at this time, October 18th, 2024, is creating, let's say, 5 reels a week that are very value driven, that are educational, that are, because again, we're reaching a cold audience. We want to give them little wins within this reel. So for example, we would every reel needs to have a hook. It needs to hook. People's attention spans are very short. It needs to hook them in the first 3 seconds. pretty much. And whether that's a visual hook or that is a text on screen, there's two different reel types that I use over and over again, which is a B-roll with text on screen, which means, it's like you typing, like you set your camera up on a tripod and you're just typing away and you add music to it, but you're delivering on that aha moment with text on screen, and maybe it's a 5-second loop. Or you could do that same thing where you're delivering on an aha moment, answering a specific question, but you're talking through it like lecture style. That type of content has done predominantly better on like TikTok than
Yeah.
Instagram. But now I do think Instagram is kind of like trying to pull in more of the storytelling kind of a vibe. Um, so those are sort of the basics.
Yeah,
But
that's
do we want to
great.
get into like specific hook, like what makes a good hook or like any of that kind of stuff?
So I actually love that you brought up the nurture type of strategy and
Mm,
the growth
uh-huh.
type of strategy. So I'd love to hit on both and start with
Yeah.
nurture. This is like a selfish question, but
Yeah.
stories have been a serious struggle for us. And what I'll
Mm,
notice is like, okay, so last week, I live in Florida. Last week, the
mm-hmm.
hurricane was like a big deal. Also, I was
Yeah.
unwell during this time. Just
Oh
like
my
thinking
God.
about, I'm on the other coast, but just thinking about friends that live on the West Coast
Yeah.
and like seeing the destruction. I had a friend who like lost their house. So,
Whoa.
yeah, which is it was just devastating. They're fine.
Yeah.
Everybody's fine. It's just things, but it is devastating. And
Totally.
so during that, I was like posting even just screenshots, nothing aesthetic, like screenshots of the weather, but like talking about, what's going on. 'Cause so many people from the Northeast, I'm originally from Jersey, were like asking me, like, are you
Okay.
okay? What's happening? Like everyone thinks that Florida's a massive state. It takes like probably 14 hours to drive through from top to the Keys. People don't realize that. They're like, oh, New Jersey is 3 hours. So like you're near everything.
Yeah.
So I was just like posting a lot about what was going on. I had, I think, like 500 views on my story, and I only have like 1,500 followers or something. And that's like a lot of views for me. And
Yeah,
so I
totally.
noticed that boost, and then it pops back down to like 30 people when I'm talking about things that are selling. But I'm like, I know my
Mm,
audience wants to hear this, but the algorithm knows that I'm selling. So my question would be, and this is something I hear from even my clients too, it's like, what is that balance between sharing personal things, keeping people engaged so they also want to learn about like what you're doing outside of your personal life? Like, how do we weave those things together? And I think Amy does this really well. I'm always like stalking her stories because I'm like, God, she's
mhm.
making it personal, but also selling shit. Like, how is she doing this?
Well, so I think there's several ways. So what Amy is really good at is like selling the dream, right?
Yes.
She's very good at being like, I'm not just going to talk about the components of an online course all day long and like your slides and your whatever, whatever. I'm
Mhm.
going to this is what is in alignment for her personally. And there's probably other, experts in the field that feel differently, but for her what makes sense energetically, I think she wouldn't mind me saying this, is like speaking to the results that having a profitable online course creates, right? So therefore it's really relevant for her to be sharing like, look, I'm at the spa, or look, I just took a nap in the middle of the day, or I'm watching Real Housewives, or I just booked a last minute trip. All things that I can do because I have a passive income business, right? This is what the freedom has allowed me to do, like financial freedom, time freedom, et cetera, et cetera. So she's really good at that. And it's in like really good alignment for her to be constantly reminding you of the potential after state that you could have if you were to go down this route, right?
Mhm.
Um, I do think in general, it depends on the business that you have. So maybe there are some exceptions here, but I do think, generally speaking, people like to buy from people that they know, like, and trust. Right. I mean, that's a standard. And on stories, particularly, like you have an opportunity to like hit all of those boxes. Right. So when you feel like you have a personal connection with someone, you are like, oh, like I know that they like, I also think, let me back up for a second. Being vocal about the things that you like and the hobbies and the things that you're passionate about checks so many boxes, because not only like does it make people feel closer to you, it keeps you top of mind in a weird
Yeah.
way. And like I remember working on a course with a friend of mine years ago, He's a real estate agent that has built his entire business just with Instagram. Like literally like had a community here in LA, but like literally exploded his business of like $100 million in real estate transactions just because of what he's done on Instagram,
Love.
right? And a big part of that is he's so unapologetic about the things that he loves, right?
Mm,
And I have a point,
okay.
and we will get back to the initial question, but he is very, very vocal about loving red wine, loving Broadway, specific musicals on Broadway. He loves vodka pasta. He's like literally constantly saying, like, he's trying every Italian restaurant in LA. He's rating the vodka pastas. He know like his audience really feels like they know him. And that creates, and especially in real estate, like if
Right.
you're going to hire someone as your agent, like you need to trust them, right? It's a very personal business, so that it really is an alignment there. But
Mhm.
also, like, think about if have you ever just felt like when someone texts you or they say, "Oh my God, I saw this and I thought of you."
Yeah.
Isn't that just like such a nice feeling because someone is like, I heard this song and I thought of you, or I saw this or whatever. Like, I always love when people do and say those things to me because I'm like, oh, like it makes me feel good that someone was thinking of me. And I also kind of like, this is kind of back to the branding conversation of like, what is your brand? What are the things that you love? What are the things that like you are just like unapologetically like obsessed with? That really like makes people feel connected to you, and it keeps you top of mind. So like probably when you're like passing a spa or something, you might be like, oh, thinking of Amy because she's so closely aligned herself with like the brand of like loving the spa, which then translates into keeping you top of mind when people need solutions for things, right? Like you're just that omnipresence kind of a
Yeah.
vibe.
You know, I am such a little nerd, and so is Bridget. We like pick things apart and like really analyze because we're like, all right, I'm gonna like
Mm-hmm.
think of her as like a case study. Like, why does her content do well? When we were first starting like all of our, social media stuff. And what I noticed was she talks a ton about croissants. That's like her thing. And
Yep.
everyone's
Mm-hmm.
engaged about the croissants. So the same idea as the red wine. And we had a full-on discussion. Bridget and I were like, what are the things that we like love that people can really relate to add as like not only just being in alignment and authentic, but also
Mm-hmm.
hey,
I love
but
when it does that. It's so funny.
for anybody listening, Zoom like does like the bubbles. Do you ever see like the thumbs up, the balloons? I'm just like, oh, okay. I talk with my hands a
Okay,
lot too. I'm Italian, is what it
same.
is. But yeah, so what do we like feel in alignment with? Like Bridget is an herbalist and she like loves to she just took like an herbalism class for herself and she loves holistic health. I also love that type of stuff. I got really into sourdough cooking for a while or
Oh,
sourdough bread
love.
cooking. Like
Totally, totally.
obsessed. So we
Mm-hmm.
like kind of weave that in now and then, but it's so interesting that you're talking about this like red wine or like whatever. So if you don't have this like relatable story where it's like maybe he didn't have this like big come up of why he's a real estate agent, but he's
Right.
right. So he's focusing on like the personal brand in itself.
Well, because he's thinking, right? He also is just this type of way. So it's like it's
Yeah,
not put on for him. Like he genuinely is just like a very excitable like person who loves a lot of things, right? So
totally.
that's it comes easy for him to do to present himself that way. But it's also showing a window into what it would be like to have him as your real estate agent. It would be
Mm,
fun. It would be fun. You'd probably go get an Italian dinner once you got the keys or once you got the offer or whatever. You got out of escrow. Like he will give you a bottle of wine when you sign the papers. He will like, all of like he has a doodle, like a mini doodle. He's like that's a whole part of it. Like again, I would say also like to you guys for your business, I'm not 100% familiar with everything that you're offering
yeah.
right now, but let's just say if you were pushing your PR services to work one-on-one with people like to sign to, your agency, showing the things that like give me a glimpse of what it would be like to hire you. So like do you have like fun meetings with your clients where you do these fun kickoff calls, or maybe you see people in person and you do this fun like dinner out and whatever and you guys go out on the town, or maybe like there's something funny about the way that you and Bridget work together and you guys have these quirks and you can show me that like, oh, there goes Bridget, she's like the analytical one and she's in her computer all day long or whatever, and I'm something something, like letting me know, kind of giving me a glimpse into what that experience of hiring you would be, would make me be like, God, I got to work with these girls. Like, I understand them, I like them, I vibe with them, we're like-minded, they get the job done, they get the results, and they have fun doing it. Then I'm like, okay, that's a vibe. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think back to your initial question about what to do on stories, a lot of things are really important to do this. Some people like to default to like something as simple as like first thing in the morning, just being like, hey, everybody, like, good morning, happy Tuesday, here's my schedule for the day. Like, I'm
Yeah.
doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, whatever. I have 3 client meetings, da da da. That kind of makes people feel like they're along for the ride. Another really important part that I think goes overlooked is, and this is honestly, I see this even with like big brands too. People don't allow their audiences to come on the journey with them in terms of what they are creating. And they don't make their audiences a part of it. And I think it's a huge mistake for a lot of reasons. If Number one, your audience is the exact people that are going to tell you the thing that they will eventually buy. So if you just want to guess, and then you wonder why you didn't say anything about this offer that you created, and then you put it out there and then it was crickets and no one bought it. I mean, there's several factors there, but maybe part of it is that you didn't ask them what they needed. You didn't ask them what they're struggling with, right? So if you are someone who has yet to create a product, letting your audience in on that journey and actually helping, like having them help you create it and showing them the behind the scenes of like, I'm working on this thing for you guys. I just want to know, like, what are you struggling with? Hey, I just want to know, like, what was a big win for you this week? I'm working on this new offer I'm really excited about. Do you guys like this color or this color? Do you guys like this or that? Like, that's really engaging. And so go back, even going back to the algorithm, like what the algorithm is based on engagement. So like polls and deep question boxes and people DMing you and hearting it and whatever, those are all things that are going to work in your favor. So if you give people an opportunity to engage with something, then that's going to help you as well. And you're kind of doing market research and tailoring your offer at the same time. Um, so greeting them, letting them in on like the things of the day, being personal and just saying like, oh my God, you guys, I have to have my 12 p.m. matcha and I'm trying a new place today. Like that's perfect. Like, again, this is social media. It's social, right? For a
Mhm.
reason. Showing behind the scenes, asking people their opinions and what they want, really like creating an environment where people feel like they can DM you inside jokes or be like, yeah, girl, like that's how you create super fans. That's how you foster community. And then again, like this aspect of selling the dream, right? So what does that look like? So for you in this like this service based thing, like what do those wins look like for the clients that you've helped get these Forbes covers or these whatever? And you're like, yeah, this was a result of like literally like it only took me 2 weeks to get this for someone because of all these things that we did behind the scenes. That's selling without putting a link and saying, hey, buy this right now. You know what I mean? It's like indirect selling, which is a really big part of it too.
Yeah, and that builds that like and trust. It's kind of, oh, even me as a consumer, it's kind of like overwhelming if somebody's throwing
Mm-hmm.
something at you and they're like, here's a link to buy. You're like, okay, well, I don't know who you are. I don't know like
Yep.
if this is actually going to work for me. So this is such a good conversation. Thank you. I think everyone
Of
has, if they
course.
don't, they should have a pen and paper out, writing down like all these things of how it can make sense for their own brands. So pivoting from stories, which is
Mm-hmm.
nurturing, and how we can really like create those raving fans, to a growth strategy like reels or carousels right now on October 18th.
Yes.
Like what would you suggest for reels, and like maybe like types of hooks that work really well, and also
Mm-hmm.
music? Because like, it's funny, for a while I was like, my brand, like I need to use the music that I like, which is great, but also
Yeah,
then when I realized that it was like an algorithm thing and I needed to go with more of like viral sounds, I was like, oh, like you just, if you don't know what you don't know. So learning
sure.
like how things work is, I think, so valuable. So like yeah, those things, what can people do?
Well, but you know what? Let's just pick apart the viral sounds thing for a second,
Yeah,
because there are sounds that go viral every single day that I'm like, I don't resonate with this at all.
totally.
And like also similarly, like when I'm giving those audios for selling social, I'm like, this, like, yes, maybe this is flying on TikTok right now, but like I don't think that there's a connection for, because I know who is inside Selling Social. I talk to them every single week. I know who's in there. I know what they want. So I'm like, I'm not going to put an audio in there that is like totally random that like teenagers are using necessarily, right? So I think having the confidence to have the discernment of like what audios feel funny to you. Go back to what you like as a consumer and as a user of this app. What do you think is funny? Don't just do something and hop on a trend because other people are doing it necessarily. Like, do you find it fun? Like the Apple dance? Like, do you think that that is like funny to do the Apple dance? Or are you like, you're like, I'm not, I don't get it, I don't whatever. You don't have to do it then, right? So like having, I think it's a balance of like, yes, it helps to choose trending audios because you know you want to give that little boost of what could potentially happen with the algorithm, and that's great. You're joining a conversation, it's showing that you have your finger on the pulse. But again, like trends happen all the time, multiple times a month and week or whatever. So choose the ones that you feel are in alignment for you, that you think are fun. Like sometimes it really is as simple as like, what will I have fun creating today? Like
Mhm.
it would be fun for me and my business partner to do the dance that's trending right now because we think that's funny. Or like everyone is lip syncing this funny audio and we figured out how to do like it with a PR spin or whatever. But like it doesn't mean to like you have to burden yourself with, you know, if you love Taylor Swift, then use a lot of Taylor Swift audios, because then you might like attract people who are like, oh, I'm a Swiftie too, and that's why I hired you. I don't know. But like going back to like your authenticity and what is like what genuinely like lights you up again is going to be the best strategy that you can have, because people can tell when you're putting something on. People can
Yeah.
tell when you're not being authentic. People can tell when you're like, when you are cringing through something and it makes people uncomfortable. So just skip it. Like if something makes you uncomfortable, skip it. You know, maybe if it's like you really are uncomfortable with being perceived, like there are things to work through there. But if like something just doesn't feel right, then move along. Um, so hooks, right? So a lot of times like and I'm just going to pull up like just some examples here, just so that we can have an abundance of clarity for people so that they find this useful,
Yeah.
hopefully. But a lot of what you know, what you'll notice with these hooks is like we're always identifying a pain point. We're always identifying the end goal. And we're like, sometimes, if we can, either talking briefly or mentioning the method that we're using or like the type of person that we're trying to speak to. Um,
Yeah, I love that. And I want
so,
to just like pause for a
yeah,
second because I think what you
yeah,
said was so valuable. I think a lot of us, including myself, it sometimes it gets frustrating when things aren't working the way that we want them
uh-huh,
to. But I
yeah.
love when you were saying like that authenticity piece. And I hope that this clips clicks for other people as much as it's clicking for me right now. It's like social media is fun and you can have fun with it and just like
Yeah.
let it not be that deep. And that's how you grow.
Literally, it's that's the thing. It's like it's so like people like, and I understand because you're like, I feel overwhelmed by all the things I have to learn. I feel maybe I'm being left behind with some of the technology or whatever, and that is really frustrating. And especially if you're like, I need my sales to come in and I need this that,
Yeah.
like that can be really like frustrating for people. So I totally get it. But and if you can find a way to like literally just find the fun and the joy in it, you are going to be in a way better position. And also, like, it's going to attract people because, like, she's having so much fun on social. Like, did you see that? I mean, I think it blew, I think it probably has like 20 million views at this point. It was that video of a real estate agent that was showing homes, but he's like, I gave this video to my Gen Z intern and this is what she gave me.
Oh
And it's
my
him
God.
literally just taking breaths and like clearing his throat for
I
like a
did.
minute and a half. Okay, that's actually a student of my friend that I was telling you of, that is the real estate agent we created the course for.
Stop.
Yeah.
I
So that's
love
one of
that.
his students. Yeah.
Heather
And so
McMahon like posted one. Do you know her? She's a comedian.
I actually don't know. I know friends that have mentioned that name before, but I don't personally
She's
really know
hilarious.
who she is, but I've heard that name.
Yeah, so she posted it. That was the first time I saw it. And I'm like, what is she
Mm,
talking about? And then I kept seeing the trend pop up and I was like, oh, this is so funny. So
so funny. And
yeah.
that was a trend that was going around, for example, that was like, gave my Gen Z intern my phone kind of a vibe, right? And it was a lot of times like people who were maybe like boomers, right, on
Right.
camera, but giving their phone to the Gen Z person. Like, and there was one that I saw that was really funny that was like a guy who owns like an antique shop or something. And so
Yeah.
the edit just was him being like chair, table, wall, and she had cut out everything else other than him literally just naming and just being like wooden, whatever. It was so funny. And like, look at how much attention that
Right.
that brought, because it's fun. Like, and that guy, that real estate agent, like, I think my friend said that like his everything is exploding for him. He was like on the news and all this stuff. And it's like, how many real estate transactions is he going to be able to attribute to that funny video? Because he was just like, I'm just going to have fun with it. It's not that
Wow.
serious, you know?
I'm
And
obsessed with this conversation because it's so true. Like just being authentic, having fun, allowing people to like laugh, like it's okay. And
mm-hmm,
I think when people think about their brand, they think, and I've heard this a lot too with our clients in our mastermind, it's like, I need to
mm-hmm,
show up this certain, okay, this actually, I will give you the perfect
mm,
example. So we
mm-hmm,
have a ton of, like I mentioned, spiritual clients. We have a ton of other clients. We have clients that are in marketing. We have, estheticians, real estate, interior design, but we have a lot in this one bulk and category. And what I will
yeah,
see a ton is they all show up with this very like etheric type of copy on their website, and all of their like Instagram grids or things will be like this very soft spoken, like beautiful, manifest your life, blah, blah, blah. But 90% of them are not that way. Like they'll show up like giggling, or it'll be like, they'll be like cursing a little bit or like kind of
yeah,
funny. And I'm like, why is none of this in your brand? And when we tell you to
yeah.
reach out and pitch as well, like especially to podcasts where you're using your voice as I'm like literally choking. You're using your voice. It's like you want to show up in your personality so they know what they're getting. And
Yeah.
it's just more fun that way. If I receive a pitch that has a little like curse word in it or something, like not necessarily, you can use like the little stars or whatever, but
No,
I'm
but
like,
yeah.
oh, okay, they're kind of fun. Like they're not afraid to be a little outspoken. And, or the other direction, maybe they are really soft and that's their brand. So
Yeah.
I love this
Because
because
they're
you're,
soothing or whatever. Like,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. And so I think a
Yeah.
lot of niches, just using that as an example, think they need to be a certain way in order to be successful. But what really is going to niche you into the perfect category is just like being your most authentic self.
Well, and it sounds cliche. Like I really want to make sure that people know that like I'm not trying to say that there isn't a strategy involved,
Yeah,
because
of
there
course.
totally is, right? Like there absolutely is a formula. That's why we have hooks, and we'll get into those in a second. But like at the heart of it has to come from you. Like that's why like even we were before we started recording, we were just talking about like what platforms you both like in your business gravitate toward. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what's going to make the work so much easier if you just go to the thing that you're excited and is coming more naturally to you. And I think it's like, again, it sounds like a cliche, but like in dating, right? Like you don't want to show up to a date and present like a version of you that is not the reality, because then what's going to happen a couple months down the line, they're going to be like, oh, I thought you were really, have you ever seen 27 dresses?
Of
And
course.
she like, okay, and she's like, I am a vegetarian, I love to hike and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh my god, you're my dream woman. And
Yeah.
then come to find out, she like eats meat constantly, she hates the outdoors, he thought that she loved dogs, she hates dogs, like
Oh my
whatever. And then
God. The
it's like, oopsie.
Sister. I
Yes.
used to love that movie. Okay. Yes. Yes. I love this.
Yes, yes. So I'm like, similarly, like you're not doing yourself any favors presenting yourself online in a type of way that is not authentic to who you are.
Yeah. And
Like
it'll probably lead
it
to
just
burnout as well. Cause it's like,
in
how do you
attracting the wrong
keep up with
people.
that? Yep. And then you attract the wrong people. Totally.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're just like, it's a win-win. You get to talk about the things that you love. You get to do it in a way that feels good for you. You get to attract people that resonate with that. Again, if people don't resonate, this is why it's like so important to not be afraid. That was so many negatives, but like don't be afraid to niche, right?
Yeah.
Because you are going to poke some people the wrong way. Perfect. Keep it moving. People are going to resonate with what you say and the ways that the audios that you use and the tone that you set, and they're going to love it. And they're going to be like, amazing, this is for me. And this is the thing that I haven't said yet that is one of the most important pieces. which is whenever you are looking at your social media profile or like a sales page that you've created, someone needs to know immediately, this is for me or this is not for me. And then they'll keep it moving if it's not. If they don't have that reaction when they land on your materials, then you have not been clear. You
So
have not been
good.
clear at all. Like tone, everything. They need to know, oh,
Mhm.
yep, she's speaking to me. Perfect. Follow, convert,
Yeah.
whatever.
This is
Yeah.
literally why I like to join the calls, even if I'm not like, speaking that day or getting like audited that day, because I get to listen to you respond to so many different types of brands. And I totally agree with that. 'Cause when somebody isn't clear or like, somebody on the Selling Social call is like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm selling this and we all have question marks and you also have a question
Mm-hmm.
mark. It's such a big eye opener of like, okay, well, I can actually relate this back to our brand. Like, are we being
Yeah.
clear? Like, are we being
Yeah.
clear in this specific way? So I love that. That's so valuable.
Well, sometimes you do need to see like how it's not clicking for someone else to be able to even understand. It's like it's so hard to see it for yourself, for
Totally.
everyone. So you need to kind of see it, the demo in action and be like, oh, I get why like that completely left me confused, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So we
Should
are
we get into
talking.
some hooks?
We should get into some hooks and then I will let you
Yeah.
go. I'm like, should we just talk for the rest of Friday?
Yeah, literally. I did clear my schedule because you never know with these things. So
You
I don't
really
have a
never
time
know.
constraint, but I want to make sure that, we get into the hooks as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so um something simple that is really effective that works all the time is giving people like a quick win, right? So a hook could be text on screen that says, this is the best or most efficient way to achieve insert outcome, right? So like let's say I am struggling with, I always just go back to like I feel like the easiest examples sometimes are in like the nutrition sort of like weight loss vibe because it's just like there's so many things that you can talk about. But like let's
Yeah.
just say you're in like the nutrition space and you help people lose weight or whatever. A part of that, what I want to say is like you don't always have to say weight loss is the thing. Again, what I was saying 30 minutes ago or something at this point, thinking about your customer and what they are currently going through and what they are struggling with. Okay. So like let's say you know that your customer is at the point where they are fluent enough in the process, but they have not gotten the results yet, where they know that like protein is a thing that they need to prioritize, right? So I see all the time, probably because like I'm always trying to hit my protein goals, that like it's hard to do that, right? Like you're like, I know I need to start it in the morning, I need to do this or whatever. How do I hit my protein goals? That's a really specific win, right? So the way that I would adjust this hook, right, is like if you're listening to this and you're a nutritionist and you help people lose weight, instead of the hook being, this is the best, most efficient way to lose weight, that's like really non-specific. I know we're mentioning the outcome there, but to me, what would make a more valuable reel is to get more granular and zoom in on a specific step within the weight loss journey and demystify something about that. So I would say this is the best way to meet your daily protein goals. You want to take it one step further and talk niche, the like I would respond and convert immediately if someone said this is the best way to meet your protein goals as a vegetarian, right? Because
Because you
I'm like,
know what you're
boom.
getting.
Yeah.
Love.
I'm like, okay, I'm a vegetarian. I struggle meeting my protein goals. You have a trick. And maybe they're like, blend cottage cheese into your eggs in the morning, have this type of protein shake because they're low cal and they're whatever. And boom, you've just doubled your protein goal. Da da da. I'm like, wow, that is such a win. And the reason why that is so effective is because, you guys, if you go into this big, long, this is the best way to lose weight. Walk 10,000 steps a day, get your water, get your protein. Like, you're basically trying to give someone an entire life overhaul in a 3-second video, which is not memorable and actually not that effective, right? But what you can do is if you showed up on my newsfeed and you solved that one tiny little issue for me, I'm going to remember you tomorrow when I go to make my eggs and I put cottage cheese in it. I'm going to remember that person that gave me that one little win. And
Yeah.
I'm going to then be like, if I didn't follow you then, I'm going to maybe go back, or I'm going to be like, huh, what else do they have? Like that's how you've started to build that authority and that trust because you've wormed into a part of my daily routine and you've given me a win. Right. So
Yeah.
that's where the specificity really is really effective. Um, generally, like if you wanted to do like a talking video, um, you could say something like, all I have to say is you're missing out if you don't do X, Y, Z,
Mm,
right? So, like, what is something that you know as the expert when people are trying to get to their desired outcome? What is something that you see people skip? And you're just like, oh God, if they just didn't skip that one thing, like you as a publicist, like with people with PR, like if you're like, all I gotta say is like, what is something that's like untapped, do you think that you see people like skipping when they're trying to like build their omnipresence and their brand? Like,
yeah, I mean,
is there
all
something
of
that
our
comes to mind?
all of our clients miss out because they're not capitalizing on PR. So they're putting themselves only in the social media box, which funny we're
Okay.
talking about social because I think it's important, but that's like
Yeah.
the overarching, like you're missing out on brand growth if you're not tapping into other people's audiences. Oh, that's where we could go.
Okay. So, right. So, okay. So that's amazing. And what I would say is like the way that I would drop that down even one more level is
Yeah.
to say, like, okay, instead of just using like saying something like, you're missing out if you don't engage PR. Okay. Well, what if you said to me, like, and I really like always try to focus on helping people
Okay.
with quantifiable metrics, right?
Yeah.
I would say, like, what if you could find a way to say one placement that someone got in a blog or on a podcast or whatever led to like this amplification of what was already going on, right? So like maybe it's something like, all I got to say is if you're about to release a book and you're not booking yourself on at least 3
Yeah.
podcasts, you're missing out on a huge whatever. And then it leads like, okay, well, booking myself on podcasts, well, how do I do that? I don't know how I do that. Do I have to hire a publicist for that? What does that look like? What's the proper way to do it? How do I find the right ones? All of these other questions start to populate, and then
Yeah.
hopefully your services are the solution,
Yeah.
you know.
Gosh, this is so great because, like, we all know these things. Like, I know these things when I'm having a conversation with somebody, but it's learning the language of like what we can pull out and then how to present it
Mm-hmm.
in social media that's going to grasp attention in a short period of time.
Yeah. Another one, save X amount of time with this one thing. So like, if you're someone who is teaching or you have a solution about like how people can use AI tools or something, I'd be like, save 10 hours of your work week by using this one AI tool and you can implement it today, you
Which is
know?
so hot right now.
Yeah, totally. So like again, this is what makes a good hook is like, I save 10 hours of your work week by using this AI tool. Like right away, someone's going to know whether or not they're interested in that.
Right.
You haven't necessarily said like, hey, attention girlies, 35 years old, you want to save time using AI? Like it's not about that. It's like you also are kind of like you're showing, not telling in a lot of ways. So like you don't always have to say like attention women or like
Right.
attention moms, but the way that you are hinting at the fact that like Amy never says explicitly like, hey, women who want to make online courses, but like everything is pink, everything is hyper feminine, everything is like girly pops, like hip, trendy, whatever. Not, of course, like men are not necessarily gravitating to that. And she doesn't have to explicitly say it, but she's attracting people without having to like explicitly say these things. So that's why bringing your own personal touch is really important. And it alleviates a lot of the burden of like the explanation by you just simply like expressing a truth,
Yeah.
and then attracting that energy back.
Yeah. Gosh, these are such good tips. Thank you so much for today. I
Of
know our audience is
course.
going to lose it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the most watched videos and watched audios. So I'll let you know what the numbers are. But
Yeah,
gosh,
totally.
this has been so much fun. Where can people find you? Where can they work with you? I know we're probably going to get a lot of knocks on your door.
Well, yes, I will the link in the show notes, it will be a direct line to me and questions, and if you want to work together on your social, on your branding, on creating an offer stack, about how to have fun on social media, if that's still a question mark for you, but all will be in the link in the show notes.
So good. And is there any like one thing that we can walk away with today that has been like an overarching theme of this conversation? Like, what would be the biggest recommendation?
I would say, because I can never be like short-winded about anything, I would say, when in doubt, like listen to your instincts. And what I mean by that is that can be with the pace in which you approach social media. Like a lot of people want to create lofty goals for themselves and they want to say like I'm going to post every single day, and if I don't post every single day then I suck and I whatever and blah blah blah. Be honest with yourself. What is like an actual attainable goal if you are really going to take social media seriously and you're like, I know I want to grow here but I also don't want to burn out. Okay, well, what you don't have to, just because someone else posted every day in the month of October doesn't mean that you have to. So, what would that look like for you to commit to a goal? I know that, okay, on Mondays are my slow days. So, every Monday, I'm going to move the needle and I'm going to make a couple of videos or whatever. Listen to yourself there. When you're approaching social again, what do you like in terms of the content creation? What do you resonate with? What do you like to see? Create more of that thing that you like to see, and you'll attract the people that you want. Don't just do what everyone else is doing. Don't just hop on a trend just because it is. Um, Also, like the only way out of cringeness is through. Like, there's if you're struggling with like that idea, like also like things are only cringe if you allow them to be, if you choose to feel that in a way. And also, like, it's only cringe until it works.
Yep.
So if you feel like, oh no, like what are people in high school gonna think? Like, who gives a shit? Number one. And number two, like as soon as it starts working, no one is gonna think it's cringe anymore. But yeah,
That is
just
the
like
most true.
again, yeah, what do you like? What do you like to see? What are you obsessed with? I guarantee if you're obsessed with something, other people are too. Um, and obviously, yes, there's a strategy and a formula, and we've indicated, that, a lot throughout this conversation. But again, if it doesn't come from you, it's not going to work. So I really think, finding out what that is and being honest and not shameful and not feeling like you have to be like other people is not only going to make it feel better for you, but it'll help you stand out, which is ultimately what you need on social media these days. So,
So incredibly good. Thank you.
thank you, Lydia. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully this was helpful.
It was an absolute, I don't even know the word. That's how good it was. I'm speechless. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast.